Hi guys, my name is V and welcome to my book nook. So in today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys about all the books that I read in February. So get comfortable, grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. So the most recent book that I finished read was Five Broken Blades. This is a new adult fantasy book, and when I first read it, I thought this was going to be a standalone, but this is actually part of a trilogy. The second book is already out, and I'm pretty sure the third book comes out in July this year, so you don't have to wait too long. The premise of this book was really interesting, and that really snagged my attention. We have 6 different points of views, and we following these people on their, so they're kind of like thrown together because they all have the same goal of killing the king in their kingdom. They each are like kind of like murderers and thieves, and so for example, one person, she is a poison assassin. Basically, she's immune to poison and she uses that ability to kill people. Then we have another guy who is the spy master for the king. Then there's an exiled prince, a thief, and so forth. So we get 6 point of views, and like such high stakes and really interesting. It is fast paced and the chapters are really short. The characters are very different from each other, and I listened to a bulk of this book and I read some of it. It was really interesting, and the way every chapter ended was kind of like on this point where, okay, I have to know what happens next. I will say that the writing is a bit simplistic. It's not the most lyrical writing, and some of the characters' points of views were a bit frustrating. I know a lot of the characters have this kind of sexist point of view, which again was frustrating to read because it's different if it was just one character that had this point of view, but so many of them were kind of like, oh, they discount something that happened because she's just a girl, or that kind of thing, and that was a little bit annoying. Another issue that I kind of had was I felt some of the characters kind of had like an insta love kind of thing going on. It was just a little bit too instantaneous and there was no build up, and they were all paired off very conveniently. There wasn't really much growth in terms of that. It was just kind of like instant, like these two, and that. But other than that, I really did have a good time and I enjoyed it. This book is definitely 100% vibes. It is the plot line. There isn't much of a plot, if I'm being honest, but it's still really enjoyable and really, it's a fun book to read. It keeps you entertained. It doesn't take a lot of brain power to read, so you can really get attached, because sometimes with fantasy you have to really pay attention to keep up. But with this one, I guess because of the way the writing was so casual, it was really easy to keep up with it, and I really did have a great time, and I will definitely be continuing the next 2 books, especially the way this one ended. I can't wait to see where it's going to go. The next book I read was The Boyfriend by Frieda McFadden. This is a thriller. I have an entire reading vlog on this if you want to check that out. In this book, we have a dual timeline. We're following Sydney, who is dating around and she's having really bad luck with dating. And one day she kind of goes on this date that goes really wrong, and this guy kind of helps her get out of the situation. A few months down the line, some stuff happened and she's dating this guy who's kind of like the perfect boyfriend to her, and she doesn't really have any complaints, but he's so mysterious, and it seems like he's hiding so much. And at the same time, there's these murders going on where it seems like someone is dating these girls before they die, making Sydney really suspicious. And then on the other hand, we have Tom's point of view. So this is set in the past, and Tom is in school where again there is this kind of murders going on, and Tom is a very suspicious character. We're kind of following that and then investigating things. I kind of felt like, I said this before, but Sydney as a character was a bit frustrating to read. I felt like it took us so long to get to the point because Sydney kept ignoring red flags and making excuses for characters, which just prolonged things. And on Tom's side, his point of view was a lot more interesting. I felt like it was, it was more interesting, more things were happening, and he wasn't as difficult of a character to get through. The writing is very simple, so I feel like it's very easy to pull you in, especially because the plot is kind of fast-paced. So it really does, grip your attention. I did have a couple of issues as well with, like, there were certain secondary characters introduced that really didn't go anywhere with them. I felt like there was no character development, especially on Sydney's part. Overall, I did enjoy it. It wasn't the best thriller I've read. Overall, I did enjoy it. I sped through it. I do think this is the kind of book that I feel like if you're in a reading slump, it would really get you out of it, especially the way the chapters are so short and it just, keeps you reading. Overall, though, I enjoyed it. Next up, I read Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. Again, I have a whole video on this one, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Basically, Deep End is a contemporary sports romance. We're following a diver named Scarlett, she is trying to get into med school, so she has to focus a lot on her academics as well as her diving career. And then we also have Lucas, who is a swimmer. He's an Olympic medalist, and he as well is very into his academics. And we're basically following them and their journey. One day they kind of, through a number of circumstances, they kind of thrown together, and then they start this arrangement with each other where it's supposed to just be a fling between the two of them, but things start to get a little bit serious. I genuinely enjoyed this book. I think this was just such a well done book, especially for what it was supposed to be. I feel like contemporary romance books don't always touch on deep issues, and I feel like a lot of the topics covered in this book were handled so well, and I just genuinely enjoyed it. I did enjoy especially the romance between Lucas and Scarlett, and I also enjoy books with this kind of academic setting. So if you haven't read it, I would really, really recommend that you pick this up and give it a try. Next up, I read Bride, another Ali Hazelwood book. This I read as a buddy read with some of my friends, and this one I went into it with I went into this with very low expectations because I'm not a big paranormal romance fan, and I wasn't sure what to expect from. We following Misery, who's a vampire, and she's forced into this marriage with a werewolf, which this marriage kind of symbolizes an alliance between the two species, right? So we're following them, and there's kind of an underlying mystery going on throughout the plot. For the first, I'd say 300 pages, I was enjoying myself. It was just so fun, exactly what you expect from Ali Hazelwood. The only thing for me that let me down was the third act scene. I did not like what happened and the way things went down there. That kind of, it made me mad, I'll be completely honest with you. So it kind of, brought down the book a bit for me, but overall, I thought it was a good book. And I heard that she's releasing, I think, a sequel to this, so I'm curious to see what, that will be about. And the final book that I read this month was Madonna in a Fur Coat. So this is a Turkish classic, and this book really took me by surprise. I don't really see people talking about this, but if you haven't read this book, please read it. We're basically following this unnamed narrator, and he kind of forms this fascination with someone he works with because he finds this man slightly frustrating. This man is very docile and he's very disconnected from the world, and he doesn't really seem to care about anything or get frustrated or angry by anything, and he's just kind of there, like he lives a very pointless life. So our narrator grows closer to this man, and through a series of events, he kind of gets a hold of this man's diary. He reads this man's diary, and basically it speaks about basically the most formative experience of this man's life and what shaped him into becoming the person that he was today. So in his diary, he basically talks about how he's so disconnected and, he doesn't really see an aim for himself. And then one day he comes across this painting in this museum, and it really resonates with him. It's the first time he kind of feels something, and then he meets the artist of this painting. And the story kind of is about finding someone who really understands you, who understands the way you feel and think, and then having that taken away from you, and you don't understand, what happened, why did it happen, and why things, turned out the way they did. And it's just such a beautiful story. The way it's written, just everything about it, it's just so beautiful and heartbreaking, and I just genuinely loved the story. So if you haven't read it, please give it a try. It's short, it's not a very long story, but it's just such a powerful story, just such a beautiful story. And it has a yearning, it has this fleeting moment of finding love and it being taken away from you, and it's just such a good book. So those are all the books that I read in February. I didn't read much, I'll be honest, but I feel like I read some really good quality books, and I'm just so happy that I managed to stumble into some of them. So I hope that you pick up some of these books and you enjoy them as much as I did. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Comment down below all the books that you read in February. I'll see you guys soon.